Alright guys, welcome back to part 5 of the front wheel drive, all-wheel drive conversion on my 99 SL Supercharged. This would be the last, hopefully the last major fabrication step. Have you seen on the previous videos, I made custom mounts to go underneath here. Got the K-frame mounted in here and got the trailing arms in here. So the next big step is the rear struts. So I'm putting in Megan Racing coilovers, and right now I have this trailing arm, let me back up a little bit, is jacked up about where it would be with the car sitting on the ground. And the strut, if I line it up close with the holes, you can see how much of an angle this thing is leaning forward. So I've seen some of the original guys back many years ago that were doing these swaps were leaving the coilover at this angle, or the strut. I'm not going to do that on this because this is going to be a daily driver through the summertime and a weekend cars. I'm going to be putting some miles on this thing, and my concern is with this thing being angled forward and then the trailing arm leaning up like this, is it's going to create a pivot point down here. It wasn't a problem in the SL or the front wheel drive, which was also the base, because the strut was in line with the axle. Hence the reason that the opening up here in the fender well is straight in line. The VR4, you can't do that because you have an axle, so they kicked it backwards, which again, another design thing that doesn't make sense to me, because as I said in previous videos, it's like they had to redesign the whole back end of this car to be either front wheel drive or all wheel drive. Why you couldn't put the strut location back here and had it hanging off the back on the front wheel drive, it would just made life so much easier. I've seen a tutorial a guy did where he actually cut the fender wells out of a VR4 and put a whole new fender well in here. I don't want to do that either. But I do want to get away from this being a pivot point, which, if you did that, I would probably drill and put a grease fitting there just to keep that lubricated. But my other concern is if you did some kind of a wedge block up here on the top to fill in that gap, not only when this coilover comes up is that going to be a pivot point right there, but it's also going to, in my mind, put this thing in a bind, because it's going to try to bend it. And normally, like on a older style ATV or something, you would be hinged up here and hinged down here, so that as the suspension went up, it had a pivot point. Since that'd be fixed up there, you're going to be putting a lot of stress on the shaft of that coilover. So what I plan to do is this. I all about using some pipe and tubing these days. Let me get this guy out here. As I had this thing made. This is 6-inch tubing, so it's 6-inch outside diameter. And then I had a shop cut these on a plasma table and then weld them on there. And I just had them do, this piece is 12 inches long. I'm hoping it's long enough to be able to do both sides. The plan is, let me set this over here. The plan is I'm going to take this 6-inch, it's called a plastic extension. It's actually the same diameter as this. I bought this off Amazon for like 20 bucks, so just wasting $20, but it's going to serve a purpose. So I'm going to have to find a way to brace up my hatch. I'm going to have to disconnect this and then take off this support here. There's one on each side. This guy here has got to come out. And then the VR4 rear strut, instead of using these two bolt holes, it'll actually use this bolt hole, and then I need another one out here in the open. So what I plan to do, and again, this may be harder to visualize, but you'll see it as this thing is coming together, is I'm going to trim this, because I'd rather waste this than that piece, which was not cheap. wasn't overly expensive, but it wasn't cheap either. Trim this guy to make a template that would sit in this place here. That way I can get my lines, because this is a brace that is double walled here, is get my markings, and then with my reciprocating saw basically cut out an opening, take this dude, you know, maybe cut it in half at an angle, and then it would slide down in this opening, aligning that bolt hole for one side, and then making another bolt hole that I'll have drilled. You know, of course I have both of them drilled, and then this would become the new strut tower. And when that guy's in place, then I'd have a little bit of an opening here that I could put some sheet metal or something in to cover up. But then I would be centered back here. It's about 3 inches back. Then under the fender well, coming back underneath here, you can see this is the edge of where the strut tower is. The new one will be approximately right in here, so it's just going to move this opening back here, so that'll be, you know, full width across here, which is fine. You're not even going to see it because the tire is going to be close, so close to the fender well, and even if you did see it after I spray it with some undercoating, it's not going to look too crazy. But let me lower this thing down and I'll show you where this thing should be sitting. Take it down just a little bit more. All right, just a little more. All right, so if I line up that bolt with that bolt hole, and then I scoot back, you'll see that's how these struts should be in there. Should be straight up and down, centered off the back side of the axle, and that's what we're going to try to achieve. So let me get this guy out of here. I got to take a couple things out of the inside of the car, like the inside panel and that one brace I was telling you that's holding the hatch up, and then get me a paint pen out and try to get some marks and see what we can get into. I'll bring you guys back here in a second. Alright guys, so I'm out here working on this at nighttime. You can already see my marks here. I took this piece of plastic tube that I was talking about, and I set it up inside this hole here, and I got my line marked on the side. And then I measured, what I ended up doing is I marked the shock holes, which they're about 3/4 of an inch off the side. Then I came up inside of here, because remember, I'm going to reuse that bolt hole right there. I'm not the piece I'm making is going to sit underneath that, and then actually the stud on top of the strut's going to go through both holes. That's what's going to happen. But made me a mark, kind of eyeballed this guy where it needed to go, which was like right here, marked around it, and then I just started cutting. I'm just using a 4.5 inch friction wheel. I got to get up in here and straight cut that on this side. So let me finish cutting this, and then I'll take you on the inside of the car and show you what needs to be cut in there. Alright guys, so I got these cut out. Got me an old nasty bed sheet that I've been dragging under cars for many years, and here is a barrier to keep grime from getting in the car, but been having to mist it with water just so it doesn't catch fire. But just like underneath the car, this was the first side I cut, and I actually cut it a little bit bigger than it needed to be, but I got a way to fix that. This side over here, I got it cut, and I've already got this guy just kind of sitting in here right now to mark it, so I know how to cut it. But I stuck a 10mm bolt there, so kind of give you an idea. The strut is going to use that common bolt hole, and then I'll have to weld up around that edge right there. But I did most of the cutting from underneath the car. I've already, this is the other side, the right side, I've already got it marked. But I mean, it's not too bad. I got, like I said, some metal that's going to fill that in, and I'm going to leave a lip all the way around there, about 1 inch or so, just so I got a good way to weld it in there and make it nice and strong. And then, as I mentioned before, I got some sheet metal. I'll cut me out a circle on both sides and stick it in there. But next step is going to be to cut these to shape. Then I'm going to slide them on top of the actual strut itself and then put it up into the car. That way I can see how they're positioned, and then may even tack weld them in if I'm at that point. So let me get to cutting on this, and then I'll bring you guys back. Alright, there's the first one in place. I don't think it'll look too bad. Of course, with all of this, you know, it's not going to look like a stock VR4 unless you use VR4 parts, but the only person I'll ever see this is me, and if some chance it ever ended up at a shop, they're probably not even going to care, to be honest with you. This is what it looks like from the top. So I got some gaps in there. I got me some angle iron, well, some thinner stuff. When I get ready to put it on, I'll show you what it looks like. But all of this will be covered up by that side panel, so once this is all said and done, you won't even know that this thing has been all-wheel drive swapped, other than the fact that it's all-wheel drive, unless I tell somebody. I'm getting ready to put the one up here on this side, and we'll see what it looks like. Alright, here's the one on the other side. Getting ready to jack her up into place. So let's see how this goes. Oops, sorry, I have my fingers in the way. Trying to get that little bolt hole lined up right there, or a stud lined up with that hole. Alright, got her up into place, and let's stick the nut on top of it. And then I'm gonna grab my impact driver, and then we'll cinch them down. That way I know they're right where they need to be. As I mentioned, this side over here, the gaps aren't as big. I mean, you can still see through there, but this is the material I got right here. I seen them, they had this, it's angle. I think they use this for something to do with garages, but it's about the same thickness as the fender wells. And then I'm just gonna cut notches in it, or not notches, but just cut little slits in it, and then I can bend this and then angle it around those round pieces and weld it into place just where I got the gaps, so that it's nice and solid. So let me start on that. Alright, so this is kind of what I'm doing with this metal to fill these gaps. Is I just tacked one end of this, and I'm using the same 6-inch tubing, and then just kind of bent this thing around. Now all I got to do is just break this thing off, which I might have to get my cutting wheel, and I'm going to cut this off and slide it up inside, and then we'll weld her in. Well, guys, I started to blow some holes in there, so I think I'm going to call it on this one. I've got the top welded, top ring, and then I'm working my way down around the sides of this. I'm just going to keep doing this process here, let me show you. Under here is I'm taking that angle and I'm just cutting slits in it, and then I'm just bending it and welding it top and bottom, and then I'll come back with some seam sealer and then some rubberized undercoating. So basically I'm gonna call it here because I'm gonna go do something productive, like mow the yard or something. I don't know. But after I started blowing those holes, I was getting a little too aggressive. Figured I'd come back and fight this some more later, but I won't bore you guys with that. This guy's still just sitting in there, but you get the idea of what I'm doing. So hope you guys like following this journey. I'm gonna, when I get done with these, then everything else should be pretty much bolt on. So when I bring you back, we'll have these undercoated, welded in, and doing some bolt-on stuff. So again, like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.